Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It is a lovely day here in suburban Chicago, and I'm walking home from the train. And I thought it would be a good time to share with you some first impressions of some games I've played. That's right, it's time for Shooting from the Hip Triple Shot. Glad to talk to you again. It's always fun to make an episode of the old podcast. Like I said, today I'm going to be giving you the first impressions of 3 different games I played. So let's just jump into it. The first one I played over the weekend, a couple weekends ago, when I was traveling for the Midwest Popular Culture Association Conference. I played this at the end of a lovely evening of gaming with some friends, and this was Unmatched. In particular, we played the Unmatched Cobble and Fog set with the Buffy the Vampire Slayer set as well. The friend of mine who showed me the Unmatched set, Chris is his name, Chris Olson, he has all of the Unmatched stuff. But he only had Cobble and Fog and Buffy the Vampire Slayer with him. But it was a nice anyway. So if you haven't played Unmatched, it is a reimagining of an old Hasbro game called Star Wars Epic Duels, I think it was called. And the idea was that you had different characters from throughout the Star Wars world who would battle each other. Rob Davio was the original designer of it, so he took that idea, brought it with him to Unmatched or to Restoration Games, and they've released Unmatched. The clever bit of this is that at the core of the game are all these public domain figures, so they can use characters we're familiar with, but they don't have to pay licensing. And then they also have mixed in there some licensed figures, and the game is universally compatible for all of them, so you can play any mix of the different characters in the game. When you play, you get a miniature of your main character, and you get a little disc representing your character's assistant or assistants. In this game, we were playing the Cobble and Fog and Buffy the Vampire Slayer sets. Cobble and Fog takes place in Victorian London, and it features characters from Victorian literature like Sherlock Holmes, The Invisible Man, Jekyll and Hyde, and one other one who I don't remember at this moment. The other set that we were playing, like I said, was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You could play Buffy, you could play Spike, you could play Willow, and I'm not sure who the fourth one was. Maybe Angel. Anyhow, I played as Sherlock Holmes, and I was playing against the Invisible Man and against Willow. It was a fun time. The way the game works, you have a hand of cards, and those let you take various kinds of actions. The board is divided up using an old system from the game Tannhauser, in which every space on the board has a color code and a pattern code that matches other spaces on the board and sort of tells you which section of the board you're in, or which section of the board you can see. Each character has ranged attacks and melee attacks and defense values and special power cards. And that you get your own individual deck with the character that you have, so the powers and the things that you can do in the game are wildly diverse. It was a fun little dueling game. You know, tactical battle games are not generally my cup of tea. We tried the Funko Pop dueling game. That really wasn't for me either. And sometimes I like them. I really enjoy Raptor, the Bruno Cathala game, where you play either a mama raptor trying to save her 5 baby raptors, or you play a group of scientists trying to capture 2 of the baby raptors. That's the first game I played. It was fun. Like I said, you each get your own deck of cards, which gives you a variety of tactical advantages. Each character plays a little bit differently. They have a little bit different things that they can do. The art and design is beautiful in the game. The cards that you have are very evocative and easy to understand. Gameplay is nice. I think the whole game with Teach took about 35 or 40 minutes. And that's with 3 of us playing, 2 of us for the first time. All in all, Unmatched was a fun game, and I would play it again if somebody got it out, but I probably wouldn't buy it myself or choose to get it out myself. That's Unmatched. I played the Cobble and Fog set. Next up is a game from a series called Escape Room in the Box. This is the same people who made the Werewolf Experiment. This one is called Time Drifters. In it, you play a person who is part of a two-person team who have made a time machine, and it had malfunctioned and broke in half, and each of you ended up in a different part of time with your time machine. Fortunately, you have your tools with you so you can repair it. The idea is that you are going to play the game and repair it, and then so is your partner. And so the game that I played was called Time Drifters, I think Future, and then there's Time Drifters Past. And if you play both, then there's a third puzzle that you solve by solving the first two puzzles together. And then if you play both halves of the game, then you can solve the third one together. It was published by Juliana Moreno Patel and Ariel Rubin. It says 75 minutes. That's a lot. This is definitely on the easier end of escape room type games. It is among the easy, probably on level of like, what's it called? Escape the Room, like the Stargazer's Manor or Dr. Gravely's Retreat. These are very simple escape room games with puzzles that are relatively easy if you've done other games like these. Most of them, it took us a minute or two to kind of figure out how the puzzle worked, and then a couple minutes to actually go through the motions of solving the puzzle. But in all cases, they were relatively easy to do, and they fit our abilities pretty easily. So from that regard, it wasn't my favorite because it wasn't very hard. But the actual design of the puzzles was really neat. You get a couple little bits of stuff to play with that was fun. There's a really elaborate plastic doohickey that becomes a key part of the final solution or the final puzzle. And I mean, overall, it was nicely designed. Again, kind of like Unmatched. I'd happily play it if somebody got it out. I mean, not this one, obviously I've solved it, but if someone got out another one, I would happily play it, and it's fun to see how they connect together. In terms of difficulty, a bit too light for my tastes or a bit too easy for my tastes, but definitely really good family weight one if you are interested. I would definitely recommend getting both, although I haven't played the other one, but I think doing both over the course of a couple hours would be pretty satisfying, and I think a lot of fun to then have that third puzzle to solve after you've done the first two. So that's Escape Room in a Box, Time Drifters. The third game I want to talk about today is one I've been very excited for since I heard it was coming out months ago. This is Anno 1800 from designer Martin Wallace and publisher Cosmos. This game was making a lot of waves in the spring and summer as it was published in German and in Europe, and it only recently made its way over to the United States, and I was able to get a copy. So a bit about it. In the game, it takes place in a sort of alternate history Europe, in which you represent a country trying to expand its trade and wealth in the world, with the goal not of accumulating capital, but of making your citizens happy. So in the game, you have a number of workers of various class levels. You have there's workers, and there's scientists, and there's owners, and then there's investors. So there's workers, managers, owners, investors, something like that. And each one allows for a coordination that lets you make a different kind of thing. You have a player board that's full of these sort of squares, and then there's a shared community board that's full of these factory tiles. And these tiles remind me a lot of the tiles from Brass Birmingham, in fact, or Brass Lancashire. In fact, one of my friends who played it with me saw the game all set out, and he goes, "Is this from the same person who made Brass?" And I was like, "Yes, it is." So on your board, you have a couple starting factories, and then you have a bunch of empty spaces. And over time, you use those empty spaces to build factories, and they go on there, and then that lets you build other kinds of factories that are more elaborate. There's a couple unique elements about Anno 1800 that make it really special. First, it's the sheer volume of different kinds of things that you can make. Generally in a game like this, you just have a few different kinds of things you're making, and the goal is to sort of be the most efficient at making those things in competition with the other people. In this game, there are literally like two dozen different products that you can make. Everything from bread and beer to penny farthing bicycles and gramophones. And each one requires a different combination of elements and things in order to make it. The game has a really interesting production model in that you never accumulate any goods. Instead, what you do is you use workers to produce goods which you immediately spend to do something else. So for example, let's say that you want to make a beer factory, and I don't have the game in front of me, so I'm just making stuff up. But at the top of the beer factory tile, there might be a steel icon and a grain icon. So in order for you to make a beer factory, you need to put one of your workers on your steel factory and one of your workers on the grain factory. Now you've produced one steel and one grain, which you immediately spend to buy the beer factory. And then that beer factory goes on your player mat, flipped over so that now you can see what it makes. I want to be clear, there's no beer tokens, there's no steel tokens. There's no resource tokens at all. You're never gathering resources. All you're doing is you're using your workers to run a couple factories and then use the output of those factories to do something. So that part's really interesting because it's novel. You get your workers back by taking a rest action where you throw a party and all the workers come home. So you're not able to overwork your workers, and in fact, once you've sort of used them all up, you have to give them a break, which is, I think, an interesting mechanism. Secondly, so that's one that I think is unique. The second is there's very limited numbers of the factories. So there are 2 of each factory that you can buy. Now, you're not allowed to buy 2 of the same factory, but since there's 3 or 4 players, generally if there's only 2 of a factory, not everyone can have it. So like for instance, I had a number of things I wanted to make with bread. I did not have a bread factory. Both bread factories were bought by other players before I got the opportunity to. In that case, then I had to trade for bread. And here's the third thing that's really unique. So first one was you don't have any goods, you just use your workers and then immediately spend those goods. The second one was that there are limited numbers of factories, so you can't make everything. You have to specialize, or at least it's not possible to reach out and get things. Third, the way the trade mechanism works reminds me a little bit of Brass. If you haven't played Brass, one of the mechanisms is that when you make one of the industry tiles, either coal or oil, or coal or steel, you're going to have these tiles that have little cubes on them. And in order to flip those tiles and earn points, you have to get contracts for spending the coal and spending the iron, and you do that when other people found factories. So I might found a textile factory that needs 2 coal. If you have coal on the board, I take the coal off your factory, now your factory flips over and it's worth points, and now I can build my factory. And the thing is, the way the game works, I don't pay you for that coal. You just get points and income, but I don't have to pay the income. It's all simulated. The same thing happens in the trading mechanism in Anno 1800. If I need bread from you in order to make whatever it was I wanted to make, and I don't have a bread factory, I spend a trading token, or sometimes 2 or 3 trading tokens, depending what kind of item I want to get from you. And then you just get a gold. It doesn't use up your factory, it doesn't do anything, you just get one gold token as a way of saying, hey, I traded and used your goods. So that part's interesting as well, because we both benefit from the cooperation. And the fourth thing that I want to say about Anno 1800, in case you can't tell, I really enjoyed this game. But the fourth thing I want to say is, in the game you don't score points for money. You don't score points for industry. You score points for making your people happy. The way that works is every time you get a cube into your system, when a cube represents some amount of your population, you also draw a card that represents who that cube is. If you might, the first working class category is mostly farmers and like factory laborers. The next category is sort of petite bourgeoisie, the little business owners and such, and then you have owners and you have investors. In each case, they have a different thing that they want, and you win the game not by accumulating money, but by getting yourself to a place where you can spend the resources needed in order to play their card and earn the points. It's a fascinating, really complex system, really fun game. I had a great time playing it, and I look forward to playing it more. The last thing I want to say about it is they worked really hard to get rid of the colonialism aspect of the game, or at least the exploitative colonialism aspect. And part of it is that you never establish colonies. You never get to go build somewhere else and take the natural resources of another place. Instead, you have to trade for them. So you can establish a trading relationship with people in other places, and then you trade with them by spending trading tokens. You never get to go establish that, like if I build a bread factory, I just have bread from now on. If I want to get cocoa beans, I have to trade for it every time, which is an interesting slight bit of elision, eliding the colonizing problem. But at least I find the attempt worthwhile. So that's Anno 1800 by Martin Wallace. So that's the 3 games I've tried recently. What have you played recently? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know. The few and proud members of the Pick Up and Deliver podcast community sometimes have conversations over there. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or you can send me a geek mail message on Board Game Geek to the username wombat929. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.